you can see 30, 40 patients in a day, maybe. I don't know. But what happens when you can touch 100,000 or 200,000? That's a big difference.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. And don't forget that CME credit is available when you listen with us. Just look for CMify in the show notes to learn how. My guest today is board certified in emergency medicine, but his most significant career impact has come in the world of healthcare management. His path to that position has been anything but straightforward. So let's hear my conversation with Dr. Dennis Mihale. We're going to have a very interesting conversation today with a person who has a unique story of professional success. So, Dr. Dennis Mihale, first of all, let me say welcome to Prescriptions for Success. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here.
And I understand that I'm speaking to you. You're in Jacksonville, Florida.
That's correct.
As we speak, and I know you guys are tracking another hurricane, as we do in Florida, and certainly hoping that works out well for you. But let's get into your story. We like to begin at the beginning, Dennis, and for you in particular, I think it's very interesting because you didn't start out your life as a physician. So let's talk a little bit about what your really early life was like. What's the story?
I was one of those fellows that was good in math and science. So I thought I was going to become an engineer, and that's what I went to college for, engineering. Did undergraduate and graduate, and then came back to New York. And just by a quirk of fate, I wound up in what you might call industrial engineering, process engineering. I worked for the office of the mayor, city of New York, and I learned they taught me everything. I learned about project management and operational deployment, how to support the agencies in the city. I knew nothing, so it was easy to learn a lot. And I was lucky to have a really good boss, Joe, who taught me. And then from there, I wound up moving over to IBM. Again, my engineering helped, but they wanted me to be in business development, account exec, sales. And it was great. I didn't know anything about business or sales. Heck, I didn't even know how to dress. All of that they taught me during the first year. So it was a very intensive training program back in the 70s before they let you out the door and meet with clients. They taught you how to analyze. They taught you how to present. They taught you how to articulate all of the things that IBM was so well known for back then. And I enjoyed a very nice career with IBM for many years.
So it sounds like, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm really curious about how you got from where you were to where you are now. But right there in the beginning, it kind of sounds to me as if your career goals were kind of fuzzy. Is that an over-analysis or not?
And that's an excellent analysis. I don't think I had career goals. I don't think they were fuzzy. I grew up in a middle-class family. My father owned a bar and grill, and I really didn't. I didn't have some aspiration, although I wanted to be successful. The funny part is if you asked me what that meant, I wouldn't have known. I wasn't sure. As I proceeded in IBM, I knew what that meant. That was to get promoted, to go to higher levels, to be a manager, and then what's called a branch manager. And that would be successful. And I understood that because I could see how my manager and branch manager, how successful they had been. But I didn't really have any career goals until I started thinking about medicine.
But now your educational basis at that point, was it primarily built around business management, or was it built around engineering, or where were you?
It was built around both. My formal education was engineering. I was at my degrees were in aerospace engineering, and IBM. No matter where you go, unless you're, let's say, pure finance, you get very good business development and sales training, and that's the side I was on. But I needed to be technical because I had to speak with the client, and I had to understand my systems engineer when he would explain what he thought were solutions. But to be quite frank, I wanted to do something that was more than just go to work and make money.
Mm-hmm.
And two surprising things happened. One, my business partner, at IBM, you always had partners, Lou Iannacone, was riding with me on the New York subway, and I was kind of chatting about med school. And he said, and I quote, "I'm going to punch you in the heart if you don't just go do something. Stop talking about it." And about the same time, I was 32. My wife and I were having our first child, and we were in Lamaze class. And the fellow next to me showed up in greens, and he was a resident. And he was either 30, 31, 32. And I was surprised. We started talking, and he had gone to school a little bit later, not at 21, 22, probably in his later 20s. And so suddenly I had my friend telling me, you keep talking about this, you'll do something. And I had somebody next to me, a stranger, I can still picture him, who was saying, well, he went later. And so I did what IBMers do. IBMers are very proactive. I walked into the dean of the medical school, probably a student dean, to ask for some advice getting into med school. It wasn't too hard to figure out that before I could be a doctor, I had to get into med school. And before I got into med school, I had to be prepared. I didn't think that I was just qualified. I might have to do some things.
Yeah.
And we were talking for about 20 minutes when the dean realized I didn't go to NYU. And he asked, he said, "How did you even get in here?" And I just said, "Oh, I'm an IBMer." I'm like, "You dude." Oh, we had such confidence, and I was dressed in a suit. And he told me to go up to Columbia School of General Studies, which was for students who had already graduated and wanted to go back into med school. And I went there, and for an hour and a half, Dean Boas, B-O-A-S, still remember her, told me that I couldn't get in because I have a very low undergraduate average, remarkably low. Yes, my undergraduate average was 2.466 over 4. I had done, I think you can do 2 out of 3 things when you're in college, but you can't do all 3. I played football, I did engineering, and I partied. And I don't think you can do all 3, but I think you could do 2. The dean just looked at me in awe, like, you don't understand, you can't get in. And I was an IBM. And I'm going to keep on stressing that. And IBM, you never took no for an answer, and there was nothing that couldn't be done. The way you would turn that around is you would say, "I understand it's difficult. What is it that I have to do?" And this went on for an hour and a half. And then she looked at me and gave a big sigh and said, "What you're asking to do is almost impossible, but you may be the most stubborn person I've ever met, and you might be able to do it." And she said, "You need a 3.5 from Columbia School of General Studies in all the courses that you never took, biology, chemistry, biochemistry, and just everything. And you're going to need at least 2 standard deviations and above on all aspects of it." MCATs, the medical exam, you're going to need fantastic referrals, letters from people, and you're going to need to do volunteer work.
Sounds like she was trying to talk you out of it.
She was, and I said, okay, I got this. And I graduated from Columbia with a 3.48. There are 6 components. The lowest component on the MCAT was 2 standard deviations above, and some were 6. But I'm an engineer. I test well. The executives at IBM were great in writing me letters of recommendation. And I did volunteer work at the hospital. And with all that, I just managed to get in by the hairs of my chinny chin chin.
That's all it takes.
Yep.
Are you a doctor struggling to provide the best care for your patients while dealing with financial and caregiving matters out of the scope of your practice? Do you find yourself scrambling to keep up with the latest resources and wish there was an easier way? Then this virtual caregiver conference resource will save you time, money, and sanity by giving you all the resources and information your patients need in one place. This conference helps you and your patients enlist the best strategies around healthcare resources and the best financial steps for your patients while navigating caregiving situations. You don't have to go home feeling frustrated and helpless because you couldn't connect your patients with the best services. Find out more at jeanniedoherty.com or click in the link in the show's notes. You don't want to miss this caregiver resource.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but first, I'd like to share a message from Navigate. You know, after spending years in the financial sector, Navigate has met lots of clients with all kinds of student loan issues. They were confused, they were overwhelmed by the doublespeak and the overly complex forms, and especially the deliberately misleading statements from loan servicer representatives. Navigate recognized the chaos in the student loan industry and immediately brought clarity and real solutions. If you'd like to flip the script on student debt, visit www.flipthescript.loan/MD-coaches to schedule a call with Navigate. They'll tailor a plan specifically for your unique situation and work with you until the loan is paid off. What do you have to lose besides the stress of student loan debt?
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians for physicians to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. After skillfully finding your way into a freshman class in medical school. When you got there, did you immediately feel like you were in the right place, or were there some misgivings?
I needed to adapt to a new culture.
Yeah.
Most of the people were 14, 15 years younger. We had one gentleman that we called Doogie Howser. He was only 19. The first day of medical school, I showed up in a three-piece IBM suit. Nobody was in a suit, or even close. And then, even worse, I still remember this. They wanted to review the 20 life stressors, things like changing a job, buying a new house, having a baby, losing your job, just all these things, these 20. And they said having one or two is good. It gives you some motivation. If you get much above three and you start to get to five, you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood up and raised my hand and I said, I had 17 of the 20 you just mentioned.
Oh, my goodness.
We had moved. We had sold a house. We had bought a house. I left my job. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And, but the class was phenomenal. They really welcomed me. They went out of their way to welcome me and help me and make me feel comfortable. And I made some friends and I had for this day. And I think it could have been a very different experience if it was, sort of like a little fraternity and they didn't want me in.
I'm going to bet you were probably a pretty good example for your much younger classmates. That you were probably somebody that they could look to as an example of somebody who has their eye on the ball and knows how to get things done. Did you ever feel that way at all, or was you just feel like you were one of the crowd?
Well, they made me the president of note service, which was
Wow.
a more powerful position than the president of the class because I had to make sure that every note service was produced within 2 days so everybody could study from it. And I never realized the respect that I had till somebody came up. And I don't know if I think I was president of note service for 2 years, but somebody came up and they asked, they'd like to run for it, but they wanted my permission.
Wow.
And I said, that's great. I'll help you any way I can. People wouldn't come to me for medical or clinical things because you have to realize many of these young men and women, their families were doctors, nurses, allied health professionals. They knew they wanted to be a doctor. Almost every course we took in med school for the first, 2 years, the basic sciences, they'd had anatomy, they'd had epidemiology, they'd had everything. And they were just going through it one more time, maybe at a little higher level. For me, everything was new. Almost every course was brand new. They knew how to study. They know how to study in their study groups. They know how to prepare for tests in this environment. So clinically, people were willing to help me, don't get me wrong, but nobody was coming to me for help. But if it was outside of clinical, people would come over and ask. They'd always ask, why did I leave and what was it like at IBM? And they wanted to know about life experience. I mean, if somebody's 15 years ahead of you, they wanted to know what it was like to be in med school, married and with children.
Yeah, I bet they did. And did you feel like you were in the right place? This is something that really fascinates me about people that select medicine as a later in life career choice or a second career choice. And I'm wondering, particularly because, medical school is not like medical practice. And I wonder if in that environment, in that medical learning environment, did you feel fairly confident that you were in the right place, or did you ever have any sort of, oh, what have I gotten myself into thoughts?
I knew I wanted to be there, but oh my God, how am I going to make this?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, it's funny, I haven't thought about this for years, but you just mentioned it. I came home and we had the biochemistry exam, and you have to pass biochemistry in med school. And I came back to my wife and kids were there, and I said, I'm going to fail. I'm not going to get this. And my wife took me and threw me in my study room and said, I did not give up everything, my house, my Mercedes, for you to fail. Do not come out till you can pass. And she said, I'll bring you in some food. And I came out hours later and I said, I'm going to ace it. And I did indeed ace the biochemistry exam and you get a great grade. And, but it was very challenging. When we hit third year and we had to interact with patients, I was in a world of my own. Nobody knew how to speak with patients, but I did. That's
That's really
where
interesting.
I distanced myself from the crowd.
I think the great majority of people who have been through medical school found those basic science years to be just really a tremendous amount of drudgery, almost a test of how much abuse you can take before you begin to do what you came there to do. But once you get into clinical rotations, it's like you finally got to come up for air. Did you have that same experience once you were actually seeing patients and doing physical diagnosis and the things that physicians do? Did you feel comfortable right away, or did it take a while?
Immediately, I felt more comfortable. Still nervous. You have a patient's life in your hands, even though there's a chief resident and there's an attending behind you. You're still worried, but I felt better, and fairly quickly, I felt comfortable because of the communication.
Mm-hmm.
I understood how to get patients to speak to me. I understood how to take notes. I sometimes needed help with, making the differential diagnosis and the assessment. But if you have good notes and a good history is 85% of the visit.
Mm-hmm.
You could talk to people. And I also probably felt more comfortable talking to the attendings. I had a funny story that I was going to tell you. Because remember, I'm 30. At this point, I'm 38. I'm
Older
not.
than some of your professors.
I was, and
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that story. But even when an attending is 55, I've dealt with 55-year-old people down on Wall Street, CEOs. That
Right.
okay, you seem upset. What can we do to make you calm? you know. So we were rounding, and I was with an attending in surgery, a fantastic surgeon who later became chair, as he should have, in my humble opinion. And he was 32, and maybe I was 37. And he's at the bedside, and he explains everything really nicely. I was standing there watching him, watching how engaging he was with the patient, making her feel at ease. She was an elderly woman. And then she said, "Thank you very much." And she said, "Now I'd like to know, what the doctor thinks." And she looked at me. I I thought
Oh my goodness.
he's still out in Miami, by the way. I thought he would kill me. And instead we went out to the nursing station, and it was a group of us. There were about 5 or 6 other students. He went out to the nursing station and he took it wonderfully. And he said, "Mr. Mihale, I am 32 years old." I didn't know how old he was at the time.
Yeah.
Dr. Livingston, that was his name. And he said, "I'm an attending, and you're older than me, and you're just a medical student. What's wrong with this picture?" And again, he forgot I'm an IBMer. And I just looked at him and I
Yeah.
said, nothing's wrong with this picture.
That's a great story. I love that. So at what point did you begin to think about what your career was going to be, that it was going to be orthopedics?
Well, I had really wanted my career to be, I was looking at ophthalmology. I really liked it, but personal reasons, my wife wound up in the hospital. Her family had to come and take care of the kids. I missed my ophthalmology rotation. I knew I didn't think I wanted to be internal medicine. And orthopedics seemed like a really good opportunity. So I did some rotations in orthopedics and I liked them. And then I, and very foolishly, I turned down one of the greatest orthopedic residencies in the country, moment of stupidity, and I didn't get in, so I had to go do a year of surgery. And then I got in, but a year later, and it gave me an opportunity to go to the IBM Watson Research Center and help design the front end of a system that did robotic surgery with hip surgery. And then,
That's a pretty good place to be.
yeah, I came back, and then during that year, I realized that probably wasn't right for me. And luckily for me, the residency director was a very kind individual, and he took me aside and he said, maybe you should go back to Florida. And he knew more about me than I realized. Take a year or work in the emergency room, and then figure out what you want to do. And so I did, and I liked the emergency room. It had the A+ personality aspects, but it also had some other aspects that I liked. And I used to work 4 days on and 4 days off, so I was suddenly getting time to see my children, take them to school, pick them up from school, play with them. It was a much better setting than I never imagined. I worked there. I passed one of the boards in emergency medicine, and I worked there. I moved ERs for no reason other than getting closer to Tampa. The CR was a little north of Tampa. And then got the opportunity with one of my heroes, the chair of orthopedics at USF, to start a medicating HMO. And that dramatically changed my professional and personal life.
Yeah, I bet it did. And right away, I want to hear some details about that. What was that? I mean, it's we have a sister podcast called Life-Changing Moments, but what was the life-changing moment there?
Well, I can tell you, but let me give you a couple of bullets to lead up to it. When I came back to work in the ER, I remember visiting in April. I was going to be there in July, and I asked to go to dinner with Dr. Phil Spiegel, who since passed away, and his wife, Carol. And we went to dinner, and he said something that he tried to deny later on, but it was a really wonderful statement. He said, "You're never going to be a great doctor, but you're going to be a great healthcare executive." And he didn't mean I wouldn't be a really good doctor, but he meant you're not going to be the chair of orthopedics, at Chapel Hill or Duke. You don't have that background.
The writer of books and maker of
he said,
speeches.
But you have a great business background. You can be a great leader, and other people go and get an MBA, but you have like so much business background that none of us is ever going to have. And so in 1991, I think, he called me and said, "We want to build a Medicaid HMO." And it was him and two other healthcare execs. And we'd like you to join us and be the chief medical officer. And I had never thought about a health plan. And I said, "Phil, you're not there. You're not going to make any money, and blah, blah, blah." And within a couple of weeks, a young mother came with her child to the ER, and she was upset. And the nurse came over and said to me, "Dr. Mihale, we saw this lady 3 weeks ago, and we saw the baby, and we gave her the referrals, and now she's back. You need to talk to her." And so I went over, but as I was walking over, I could see the tremendous bond between mother and child, and I knew something was up. And I said, literally, "I can see how close you are to your child and how close your child is with you. Something must have happened because we gave you the referral." And she broke down in tears. Every place we had sent her was no longer accepting patients, Medicaid patients. And even the county medical clinic, every county has a clinic, told her that she could have an appointment in 3 weeks. And her child had an ear infection, and that's not. So I looked at her and I said something that I'd never said before. I said, "Tonight you get the greatest health care in America." I treated her. I got the baby in good shape. The next day I called the head of the county clinic, and I said, "Do you realize that this is your standard protocol?" "I don't think you do." And then I called Phil Spiegel, and I said, "Is our health plan, are the patients going to have a primary care doctor?" Because that was the problem. She didn't have a pediatrician. She didn't have a doctor to go to. And he said, "Not only is every patient going to have a primary care doctor, but we have to have 13 specialists in network in every county." And I said, "We're going to lose money, but I'm in." And so we built this health fund. And then I built a second, and I moved from, I never left clinical medicine. I always have treated family, friends, people at work, even volunteer. I was in the reserves, but my primary focus became more as a healthcare exec. And I realized that even though even though I wasn't seeing patients, I could touch 1 million lives. We created something in the health plan that the state of Florida adopted. And today, millions of lives, people go by that, and the state of Florida uses it as they should. And so you can see 30, 40 patients in a day, maybe, I don't know. But what happens when you can touch 100,000 or 200,000? That's a big difference.
That's a pretty rare story for someone at that stage of your professional development to, first of all, recognize probably the most severe flaw in our healthcare system in this country, and that is how do you get in it?
Yep.
And then to have the motivation and probably more importantly than that, the ingenuity to involve yourself in a way to do something about it. Do you see yourself that way? Do you understand how rare that is and what a blessing it is to the people that you're serving?
I do, because, again, you're making me think about a lot of things I haven't thought about. Fast forward 25 years, and I joined a company as the chief medical officer, multi-state, that provides care in the home for the highest need, highest risk patients who have a problem with access, with social determinants of health, with behavioral health, who are not always welcome in the ER and probably don't always have a primary care or don't get the attention they need. And I was just thinking about that. I started with that lady, and I, in a sense, I ended with that lady. I left it a year and a half ago, not quite a year and a half ago, after 5 years of being ahead and grooming my replacement. But that's kind of where I wound up, where we in and of the community, treating people in the home, treating people in the community, treating the homeless. And I'd forgotten that that's really where I started.
You went so far as to do some more education, and you got yourself an executive MBA degree from University of South Florida. And I'm really interested to know, I don't want this to sound like a foolish question or way too much off the wall, but did that particular part of your additional education make you more effective at what you eventually came to do?
It did, but in an unexpected way. I thought that learning about finances and learning about some of the hard business topics, that was going to make me. I knew that having the MBA might open up doors later on. As it turned out, I didn't really pursue those opportunities. I did other ones where I don't think it mattered, although it might have. But the soft sciences, reminding about the people skills, learning about personnel, learning about HR, that seemed more valuable. And it wasn't like I became a better person, but I became more aware. So if I wasn't making myself available, I would realize it before somebody told me. Or if I didn't realize it, but somebody told me, I would react more favorably. And I realized that people needed to come to work and feel comfortable. So when we built our second HMO and we had more than 100 employees, they really enjoyed coming to work. And then I knew that the person who had the best people skills that I've ever known, far and away, was my wife, who was an IBMer. And then she had retired to have children. And then when I built the second HMO, I asked her to come and be in charge of member services, but eventually she became the chief operating officer, and everybody just loved her. That was probably one of the great decisions I made, because she was better than I was. And we had an open door policy, just like IBM. If you didn't agree with your boss and you couldn't resolve it, you could go up to his boss, but you had to do it out front, transparent. I'd like to speak with your boss. And you could go all the way up. And so we were having a full company meeting. The entire company was there. And I said, and I explained the rules. I wanted them to know it. I said, but you can never go behind it. I have to tell them honestly. And if they tell you they can't, and you just come to HR, because that's your right as an employee. I said, now, who do you go to when the problem is with me? And I was hoping they were going to say the Ford. And they unanimously said Sharon into my life. So I did, she was very well respected, and I think they knew that there was an issue they could go to her, and then she would come and present it to me in a way that would be understandable to me and facilitate a solution.
That's a great answer, and it really reveals a lot about your level of wisdom and your willingness to make sure that you understand the problem before you start coming up with solutions. And I congratulate you for that. Dennis, I really enjoyed this conversation. I really had a kick out of talking to people that understand what the practice of medicine should be built on, or at least what I think it should be built on. And for me, and I think for you, it's making sure that the people who need the help get the help, and you certainly have made yourself a master in that regard. And I congratulate you for that. And again, I thank you for being here with us to share your story. Before we get away, I want to get to what is my favorite part of the show, and that's where I get out of the way. And that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. And audience, Dr. Dennis Mihale is going to share his personal prescriptions for success.
Well, I think one of them is being open to advice. Try and find a mentor. When I had a mentor, I did well. When I didn't do well. My mentor was Dr. Phil Spiegel. He was the chairman of orthopedics for the USF. And he always took time for me, and he actually helped me build my first 2 health plans. And I trusted him. I trusted him so much that I made him chairman of my company, so that you need somebody close to you who can say no, who can tell you when you're wrong. You need that, because you are going to be wrong, and you need somebody who can walk you back to your room and say, I think you're wrong. Let's go talk about this. That's really important. Somebody close. And now I have several people like that. I also think that, and I learned this much later in life, much later, there are enough people with whom you can work. You have lots of choices, much more than you think. Find people you like and trust. If you don't like somebody, don't work with them. It is going to be burdensome to go to work every day. And if you don't trust somebody, you don't have to be mean. You don't have to be judgmental. You can just either try to understand what the difference is, or politely move on. I'm very anxious for people who are working in an environment where they don't have trust. The last company that we did, they actually used the phrase, I coined it. Our patients, we need to have a relationship with our patients of safety and trust. They have to feel safe, and they have to trust. And that took off. Everybody understood that. And I don't know where I got it from. Probably, again, my wife. But you need to create that in your relationships, whether they're with a client, with a friend, with a colleague, with a boss, with someone to whom reports to you. And then there are some things that I learned midlife, and I've never forgotten those. And that's family's the most important thing. You're not going to, on your deathbed, you're not going to wish you'd made a little more money or had a bigger title. We made that clear. And I never realized how clear we made it, because I spoke to the team about it. We discussed it. We shared it. We told them that. And then one day we had a consultant come in and do a 360. And she came into my office and she said, I asked people what the most important thing is, and everybody said family is the most important thing. And then I asked them, who taught you that? And they said, you, me. And I said, well, it is. And if people are worried about their family, they're not going to do a good job, so give them time off. And we did that. Somebody was worried about their family, and they asked if they could take a day and drive down. And I said, it was Miami. I said, no, we're going to give you a bonus and take the tickets and get you down. And you're driving and you're worried you're liable to get an accident. Somebody else had something they needed to do, And I remember I applied something I had learned at church. It was Easter time, and if you're Christian, and you don't have to be, but the churches are filled with Easter time, and everybody was in the rectory, but the head monsignor was in the rectory. And he said today's lecture is going to be about tithing. And there was a groan that rumbled. And then he said, but I'm not going to tell you how much to give. And we all looked around like, wait a second, this is a trap. And he said, I'm going to tell you, if you're not giving, please give. If you're giving, give some more. And put us at the top of your budget, not at the bottom, because you'll have money. And so somebody came in and they didn't have enough time to read, and they needed to read to be comfortable. And that person later became very successful for many companies. And the last company I worked for, he was actually the CEO, and that's when we come back. And the advice I gave him was, I want you to take off every morning, every Wednesday for 4 hours and read. If you want to read, if you're comfortable. And he said to me, but I don't understand. I said, well, I'll explain it to you. You're going to be a better employee. You're going to be happier, and you'll be more productive. Yeah, but I'm taking only 4 hours. And I said, no, you won't. During the week, you'll make up those 4 hours. And I said, if something's important, you have to put it first. Then you'll get to it. And that became something I started to share to people. Stop putting it at the bottom of your budget. Stop discussing. Put it first. And I remember this very vividly. I walked into the ER when I was still working in the ER, and the nurse didn't look like, she looked like she was distracted. And I went up to her and I said, did you show up for work today? And to her credit, she said, no. I said, you have something that's, troubling you. Yeah. I said, well, why don't you go outside and relax, and I'll take care of the ER, and you're ready. And she came back, and I don't know if it was 20 minutes or 30 minutes, didn't matter. We were managing the ER. We had more than one nurse. And then she said, I showed up now. To this day, I have no idea what she needed to attend to, but if you ignore the employee and their family, you cannot sustain success. If you relish the employee and their family, not just say it, and it's not a slogan on the wall, our employees are our most important asset. I hate seeing that, by the way. But if you prove it, if you literally prove it, then people will learn it. And they will not be timid about saying, I need to take a day off, or I need to take 2 days. And you give it to them. And you will enjoy, as a company, first of all, you'll enjoy it personally, but the company will enjoy it. I think those are things that I would tell you. Also, think about what your retirement is going to be like. My retirement is going to be working 3 days a week. I will never give up venison. I will never stop doing this. So if I'm thinking about retiring the way everyone else does, I'm not going to work anymore. I will go crazy. So you need to think about what your retirement is. Is it getting away totally, which is great? Is it traveling? You better make sure that your significant other likes to travel. What is your retirement going to be like? And I'm not going to do financial. I'm just thinking, what is it going to be like? What is it you really want to do? And are you preparing for it? Because if one day you're suddenly retired and you haven't done the prerequisites, you haven't built the little foundation, you won't be retiring the way you want. That's kind of it. I don't know. I hope that helps the audience.
I think that's going to be a big help for our audience. I can tell you it's a big help for me, and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today. That is very profound, and I think I'm much better today having had this conversation with you. Before we go, I want to give Dr. Dennis Mihale an opportunity to share with us where you can be found, where you can be contacted, Dennis. So email addresses, upcoming presentations, books that you're going to be writing, or whatever. What would you like our audience to know?
Well, I'll give you a simple email. It's D as in Dennis, and my last name, Mihale @gmail.com. And in the subject line, put RX for success. Then you can put what you want to discuss. But if I see RX for success, I'll know that it's not spam. I spoke early this year. I don't think I'm speaking for the rest of the year, and I haven't planned on anything for next year. So you won't find me at any conferences or webinars.
Well, thank you again for being our guest today, Dr. Dennis Mihale. It's been a great pleasure having a conversation with you.
I really enjoyed this, and I'm very grateful that you invited me, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us reach more listeners by leaving a rating and a review, especially on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If your app doesn't have that option, just leave us an email or a voicemail through SpeakPipe at www.mymdcoaches.com/podcast. You can also help by becoming a Patreon member. That link is in the show notes, and we hope you'll also follow our companion podcast, Life-Changing Moments with Dr. Dale Waxman. Special thanks to our producer, Craig Clausen, our promotions manager, Mariana Rodabaugh, and to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.